Imagine waking up one morning with the quiet realization that the life you've built isn't truly your own, that the choices you've made, the values you defend, even the goals that drive you forward, may not have come from the core of your being, but were shaped instead by the invisible hands of culture, expectation, and fear. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, how much of who you is a reflection of your inner truth, and how much is a carefully crafted performance molded by the world around you? How often do you feel like you're playing a part in someone else's story, reciting lines written by family, society, or the quiet doubts that echo through your mind? Today we begin a journey through one of Carl Jung's most powerful teachings, the idea that life does not truly begin until you discover who you really are. But what does that mean? Is finding yourself just about self-awareness? Or is there a deeper, more sacred process unfolding beneath the surface? Stay with me, because what you're about to uncover may forever change how you see your identity and how you awaken the part of you that's been waiting to be found. Carl Gustav Jung was not just a psychologist. He was a pioneer of the soul's journey. He dared to look beyond behavior and symptoms, to explore the unseen depths where the true self waits in silence. Unlike many thinkers of his time, Jung didn't believe that healing meant simply fitting in. He believed that true well-being comes from a sacred process he called individuation, the unfolding of the unique self beneath all the noise of the world. But here's the hard truth. Most people never begin that journey. They live out roles that were handed to them, without ever questioning if those roles reflect who they truly are. They chase approval, measure worth through status or success, and try to silence the quiet voice inside that says something is missing. Jung taught that real life doesn't begin until we stop running from ourselves. But before we can talk about awakening, we need to understand what keeps most of us asleep. From the very first moments of life, we are shaped by forces we cannot see. We are given names, identities, roles we never chose. We're taught what's acceptable and what's not, what earns praise and what brings disapproval. And all of it happens so subtly, so gradually, that we rarely stop to question it. We adapt, we conform, and slowly we begin to hide the parts of ourselves that don't fit the mold. Think back to your childhood. Were there moments when you spoke or acted freely, only to be told you were too sensitive, too wild, too much? Maybe you were told to be realistic, to calm down, or that certain dreams and emotions were simply inappropriate. So you learn it. You learn to tuck those parts away, to lock them out of sight. And in their place, you built a mask. Jung called it the persona, the face we wear in public, the version of ourselves we create to belong. But here's where the problem begins. The more we identify with the mask, the more we forget the face beneath it. We start to believe that the persona is who we are, and the deeper truth within us fades into the shadows. And then there's the other half of the equation, what Jung called the shadow. If the persona is what we show the world, then the shadow is what we hide from it. It holds everything we've rejected, everything we've suppressed, our fears, our forbidden techniques, our insecurities, but also, strangely enough, our hidden strengths. And here's the truth. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we refuse to see it. But before we talk about what it truly means to find yourself, we must first understand what prevents most people from ever doing so. From the moment we enter this world, we are conditioned. We are given names, identities, and predefined roles. We're taught what is acceptable and what is not, what is rewarded and what is punished. This process is so subtle and gradual that we rarely stop to question it. We adapt, we conform, and over time we begin to suppress the parts of ourselves that don't align with the expectations placed upon us. Think back to your childhood. Were there moments when you expressed yourself freely, only to be met with disapproval? Maybe you were told to be realistic, to stop being too sensitive, or that certain emotions and desires were inappropriate. Slowly you learned to hide those parts of yourself, to tuck them away where no one could see them. And in doing so, you began to build a mask, what Carl Jung called the persona. The persona is the face we present to the world. It helps us function in society, navigate relationships, and earn acceptance. But here's the problem. The more we identify with this mask, the more we forget what lies beneath it. We start to believe that the mask is who we are, losing touch with our deeper, authentic self. And then, on the other side of this mask, there's something even more hidden, what Jung called the shadow. If the persona is what we show to others, the shadow is what we hide, not just from the world, but often from ourselves. The shadow holds everything we've rejected or disowned, our fears, our shame, our unspoken desires, and yes, even our hidden strengths. And here's the truth most people miss. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It doesn't vanish because we pretend it's not there. Instead, it lives beneath the surface, influencing our thoughts, our behaviors, and our emotional reactions, without us realizing it. We might think we're in control, but if we haven't faced our shadow, we're often just reacting from it. This unconscious part of us shows up in projection, in judgment, in sudden emotional outbursts that don't seem to match the situation. And until we're willing to turn inward and meet the shadow face to face, we will remain fragmented, disconnected from the truth of who we really are. Have you ever disliked someone intensely, yet struggled to explain why? Or felt triggered by a specific behavior in others, one that sparks a reaction far stronger than the situation calls for? Carl Jung believed these moments hold a hidden truth. What disturbs us in others often reveals what lies hidden within ourselves. It's called projection, and it happens when the parts of us that we've suppressed or denied start to show up in the outside world. We don't see them in ourselves, so we spot them in someone else. That frustration you feel, that judgment you cast, that person you just can't stand, it might not be about them at all. It might be your shadow speaking to you from a mirror. But here's the twist most never realize. Within the shadow lies not just pain and fear, but potential. Parts of yourself you've ignored, strengths you've silenced, truths you have buried. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the missing half of your wholeness. And the moment you stop running from it and begin to integrate it, you unlock a deeper power within. Not power over others, but power over your own life. Power rooted in self-awareness and the freedom to be fully, unapologetically you. This is where the real journey begins. Not in trying to become someone new, but in remembering who you truly are. Beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations, beneath the carefully built persona. Are you ready to confront the truth of your being? To face what you've hidden and reclaim what you've lost? Because what comes next will challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself. And it will open a door to a kind of freedom most people never touch. You see, most people go through life thinking they already know who they are. They cling to their name, their job, their cultural identity, and the stories they've told themselves for years. But Carl Jung showed us that our true self is far more complex, that what we think is our identity is often just a surface construct, a sliver of something much deeper. Underneath that sliver is a vast inner world, forgotten memories, repressed emotions, hidden talents, and unrealized dreams. And unless we go inward and uncover it, we spend our lives living from the surface, never tapping into the immense power that lies within. That deep, unshakable sense that there's more to life than this. That's not your imagination. That's the voice of your unconscious, calling you home. Jung called this sacred process individuation, not the act of becoming someone else, but the integration of every part of yourself into a unified whole. The light, the shadow, the known and the hidden, the comfortable and the painful. But before integration can begin, you must first confront what lies beneath. And that's where most people stop. Why, Bob? Because to face yourself is to face discomfort. To look into the eyes of your fear, your shame, your doubt. It's far easier to distract ourselves with work, with entertainment, with the constant noise of the world. We scroll, we binge, we fill every moment, not realizing we're avoiding the very thing that would set us free. Because no matter how far we run, those unseen parts of us don't disappear. They manifest in anxiety, in patterns of self-sabotage, in broken relationships, in a quiet, persistent feeling that something essential is still missing. Jung believed that our unconscious never stops speaking. The problem is we've forgotten how to listen. But when you start listening, truly listening, You begin to see the patterns. You notice how your deepest wounds have quietly shaped your choices, how the desires you've buried still steer your behavior from the shadows, and how the things you fear the most often hold the very wisdom your soul has been waiting for. Let's take a simple example, the fear of rejection. So many people go through life desperately seeking approval, avoiding conflict, hiding their truth just to keep the peace. But where does that fear come from? Is it really about what others think? Or is it rooted in something deeper? Perhaps a moment in childhood where you felt invisible, unworthy, or unloved. A moment you never fully processed that quietly became part of your identity. Jung would say that fear is a shadow aspect, not just an emotion, but a fragment of the self left unacknowledged, waiting to be brought into the light. Because until it is seen, until it is embraced, it will continue to pull the strings from behind the curtain of your awareness. But here's the extraordinary truth. When you finally face those hidden parts of yourself, they lose their power over you. They stop controlling your decisions in secret. They stop whispering doubt into your dreams. Just imagine, what would it feel like to live without the fear of judgment? To speak your truth with clarity, to move through life not based on what others expect, but on what truly resonates deep within you. That's the power of individuation. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the wholeness that was always inside you. A wholeness buried beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and silence. And so the question becomes, how do we begin? How do we reach into the unconscious and uncover what's been shaping our lives from the shadows? Carl Jung believed that one of the most powerful gateways into the unconscious is found through symbols, through dreams, and through deep introspection. He saw dreams not as meaningless fragments, but as sacred messages, windows into the soul. Each image, each emotion is a clue from your deeper self, revealing truths your waking mind has forgotten. But it doesn't stop there. Jung also emphasized the importance of creative expression. Art, music, writing, these are not just hobbies, they're pathways. They bypass the logical mind and speak directly to your unconscious. When you paint without rules, when you write without fear, you begin to draw out the pieces of yourself that have been waiting to be seen. And perhaps the most important step of all is simple awareness. The moment you pause and question your thoughts, your reactions, your beliefs, that is the moment your transformation begins. Because the moment you stop running and start listening, you begin to reclaim the self you were always meant to become. Because here's the truth that so few ever realize. Most people live their entire lives as strangers to themselves. They follow paths that were never truly theirs, chasing goals that echo the voices of others, parents, teachers, society at large. They silence their true nature to fit into a mold that was never designed for them. And all the while, a quiet ache remains within. But you don't have to be one of them. You have the power to shed those false layers, the conditioning, the fear, the stories that never belong to you. You can choose right now to step into the fullness of who you are, unafraid, unapologetic, unfiltered. And in the next part of this journey, we'll go even deeper. We'll explore the ancient forces that live within you, the hidden archetypes that shape your destiny and hold the key to unlocking your highest potential. What comes next might forever change the way you see yourself. If discovering your true self was as easy as making a decision, then everyone would be living in perfect alignment with their soul. But as we've seen, the journey is far more intricate. It's not just about choosing who you want to be. It's about unearthing the hidden forces that have shaped you all along. It's about turning inward to confront the parts of yourself you've long ignored and piecing together a self that is whole, not fragmented. So here's a question. Why do you feel drawn to certain desires, fears, or behaviors? Why do you keep repeating the same mistakes even when you want to change? Carl Jung's answer was nothing short of revolutionary. He believed that deep inside each of us live ancient, inherited patterns, psychological blueprints etched into our unconscious mind. He called these blueprints archetypes, and whether we recognize them or not, they silently shape the stories we live. They mold our identities, influence our relationships, and guide our emotional responses in ways we rarely understand. Think of the stories passed down through every culture, The hero's quest, the wise elder, the trickster, the orphan, the sacred child. These aren't just fiction. They are symbolic reflections of what lives inside you. They mirror the universal energies at play within the human psyche. Take the hero archetype. This is the part of you that craves meaning and growth, that rises up to meet challenges, that longs to evolve into something greater. But the hero never walks alone. He is always accompanied by the shadow. The shadow is the inner resistance, the fear, the doubt, the part that sabotages just when you're about to step forward. And here's where the real battle lies. Not in conquering the shadow, but in understanding it. You don't grow by suppressing your darker emotions. You grow by listening to them. You grow by asking, what is this trying to teach me? Let's say you struggle with the fear of being seen. You hesitate to speak up, to express your truth, to take space. Now pause and ask yourself, where did this fear begin? Was there a moment in childhood when expressing yourself led to embarrassment or rejection or punishment? Jung would say this fear didn't arise from nowhere. It's a fragment of your shadow, a part of your psyche that was exiled long ago. But that fear holds power, not to harm you, but to lead you back to the truth of who you are. Within that same fear might be your suppressed voice, your creative fire, your desire to be seen and heard in your full authenticity. And only when you bring that into the light, only when you welcome that hidden part of you, can you begin to heal, to grow, and to finally feel whole. But the archetypes go far beyond just the hero, the shadow, and the inner masculine and feminine. There are many more: the sage, the rebel, the caregiver, the trickster, the creator, each one representing a specific force within the human psyche. And each one has a role to play in your personal evolution. Sometimes the sage emerges, urging you to seek knowledge and wisdom rather than instant gratification. Other times the rebel awakens, pushing you to question old rules, break free from conformity, and live by your own truth. Each of these archetypes carries with it not just light, but also a shadow. The caregiver, for instance, may give endlessly to others while secretly resenting their own needs being ignored. The trickster may inspire creativity and playfulness, but can also lead to self-sabotage if left unchecked. Carl Jung taught that true transformation doesn't come from choosing one archetype and rejecting the rest. It comes from learning to recognize, respect, and integrate each one. So the question becomes, which archetypes are active within you right now, and which have been ignored, waiting patiently for you to remember them? This brings us to a powerful turning point, because once you start recognizing these archetypes within, you begin to understand why you feel pulled in so many different directions, why one part of you longs for stability while another craves freedom, why you desire connection but also need solitude. These inner tensions aren't flaws. They are signs of a rich, multidimensional psyche, a self that cannot be reduced to a single role or identity. The more you integrate these parts, the more whole you become, and with wholeness comes clarity, a sense of deep inner alignment that transcends approval, comparison, or fear. You begin to make decisions from your inner truth, not from past wounds or societal scripts. You begin to live a life that is no longer fragmented, but fused with meaning, purpose, and authenticity. This, Jung believed, is the ultimate goal of individuation: to become whole, not perfect, to live not from the mask, but from the soul. And that is where your true power begins. But let me leave you with this final reflection, one that Jung and many mystics before him have echoed through time. The journey of self-discovery is not a luxury reserved for the few. It is a necessity for anyone who wants to live a meaningful life. To find yourself is not to become someone new. It is to return to who you've always been, before the world told you who you should be. It is a path that demands courage. It asks you to face the darkness within, but only so that you can reclaim your light. And while this journey is deeply personal, it is also universal. Because the more you know yourself, the more compassion you cultivate for the hidden struggles in others. You begin to see that beneath the masks and roles, we are all on the same search for truth, for healing, and for a life that feels real. That is the quiet revolution Jung invited us to ignite. And now that invitation is yours to accept. If this message stirred something within you, if it made you pause, reflect, or even question, then your journey has already begun. Don't let it stop here. You've just taken a powerful step toward awakening a deeper truth within yourself. We invite you to continue exploring these mysteries, to reconnect with the forgotten parts of your soul, to seek out the questions that truly matter, because life doesn't truly begin until you find yourself. And now you know the way. Us, great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching.